Cool. I posted a link too.
Cool. And then I'm just going to share the screen over here.
Cool. I posted a link too.
Awesome. Cool. And then I'm just going to share the screen over here. Cool. I posted a link too. Awesome. Cool. And then I'm just going to share the screen over here. I got to pull that off because then we're going to use reverting. Cool. I posted a link too. Awesome. Get this up here. There we go. All right, guys, I think we got some participants on here. Let me just see who we got real quick. I'm just going to pull this up, pull it back. Got Peter and Troy on. We're going to wait a couple of minutes just to make sure everybody gets on. I hope you guys are doing all right. If you guys have questions or anything like that, we've got a chat over here. You can post those in there. I'm just going to type a little message to you guys right now. Hope the weather and everything else is wonderful wherever you are. Matt, how's the weather up there in NorCal? Are you in NorCal or are you in SoCal right now?
NorCal. Sunny and nice, man. It's going to be like 70s today, probably.
70s.
Going to do some sprint work outside.
Nice, nice.
What about in Redlands?
It's all right. It's nice and sunny out. I'm going to go for a hike later on. Probably going to hit the desert up, so it'll be cool. And for those of you watching at home, if you want to share this link with anybody right now, please do. We'd love to have more participants on here. We're going to give a lot of value today. We're going to try and answer any questions you guys have about ketosis, about dieting in general, about fitness in general, really anything you guys have. We're here to answer it. We want to make sure that this is educational as possible for all of you. Getting started in probably about 2 or 3 minutes. So if you want to share that over, it'd be awesome. And for those of you watching on Facebook, if you have any questions, just post those in the comments. I'm going to be watching the webinar chat from here, and then Matt's going to be watching the Facebook chat. So. Awkward silence.
Okay. That's how most of my first dates go anyway.
What was that?
That's how most of my first dates go anyways.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah. I'm drinking my exogenous ketones right now. Got some ketogenics.
There you go.
Yeah. They give me quite the buzz, man. Quite the buzz. I feel
really
after I take them. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty nice. It's not like caffeine or anything like that. I just feel like I could do like 9 burpees right now.
Yeah. I think it's the amino acid blend they put in there and how it helps the ketones cross the blood-brain barrier.
Well,
I think that's the.
Yeah, they've got alpha GPC in there. They've got L-theanine in there, and there is a little bit of caffeine in there. There's not a lot, but those 2 things particularly, those will help extend the caffeine high, and actually L-theanine will help lengthen the caffeine high, but it'll reduce the shakiness and the jitteriness that you get.
Oh yeah, I mean a lot of people take that before bed too, just to unwind and relax.
Yeah, if you take L-theanine with a cup of coffee, you could actually go to sleep if you wanted to.
Yeah.
It actually really helps with reducing that aspect of caffeine. Cool. Get started in about 1 minute, guys. If you're just joining us, we've got a cool chat over here that I sent a message to everybody out. So you can use your chat function to ask us any questions during the webinar. I'm going to be in presentation mode, but I'll take it off of presentation mode to check this chat. And then we're also broadcasting on my Facebook page, Facebook Live. Matt, can you post a link to that in the chat there?
Yes, absolutely.
Want to watch on Facebook, and they don't really pick up a computer with Zoom. Cool. So we just posted the link there to my Facebook page. It's my news feed. It's we're broadcasting the same webinar there. And if you have questions and you're watching on Facebook, you can post any of those questions in the comments on the live feed there. So let's get started, guys. All right. So this webinar is called "What's the Deal with Ketosis?" I've actually given it a few different titles, but we've talked why ketosis, becoming superhuman with ketosis, and really we're going to be talking about all these things. We're going to be talking about the benefits of ketosis. We're going to be talking about keto adaptation, why ketosis should be considered a viable alternative amongst a lot of the different tools you can use here in the wonderful world of fitness and nutrition. I also want to emphasize this from the beginning. Neither Matt nor I are completely dogmatic keto guys. We consider it a really, really valuable tool that people could and should use if it works for them. There's a lot of really great benefits to it. It's also not the easiest diet in the world to follow. And so we have to be very frank and honest about that. And I think there's a tendency in today's fitness industry to, when you have a particular diet paradigm, to treat it almost like a cult, where you're like, oh my God, you're using carbs. What's wrong with you? Haven't you been reading the Bulletproof blog, or haven't you been to Paleo FX? And we tend to do a lot of fitness shaming, and we don't want to do that here. We want you to be able to look at ketosis for what it is, which is a really valuable tool that you can use. And I think one of the reasons why we need to do this is because there's so much of a lack of education about fat, its value in the diet, the types of benefits you can get from fat. And there's a lot of fear mongering, I mean, obviously over the last 50 years, centered around fat, as far as concerns with things like heart disease and other types of ailments that have been associated with fat over the years. And we think wrongly associated with fat over the years based on the evidence. And we honestly believe that once you figure out ketosis and you're able to use it at will as one particular tool, it can seriously change your life. It can change your life for the better. It helps to make your brain function better. It can help you to burn fat. It can help you to build muscle, contrary to a lot of popular belief. It can be a seriously awesome tool for making every aspect of your life better. And we're talking about your work life, your family life, being in a better mood in general, being clearer in your head, and gaining all the fitness benefits that we know we can get from it, like losing a lot of fat and building muscle. So if you don't know who we are, you're probably wondering who the hell we are. So want to go a little bit just into our stories and what we do here in the fitness industry. My name's Chris. I'm an international fitness coach, and I'm going to try to avoid reading this slide too much, but I've been on YouTube for quite a while. I run a YouTube channel called Warrior Soul of Goji. I'm the owner of a company called Warrior Soul, in addition to my buddy Andrew Marr, who's a Special Forces Green Beret, retired, and my buddy Tony Florio, who's a flow specialist. I'm a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and Warrior Soul started as a veteran lifestyle company and is still a veteran lifestyle company, but we've gotten more and more into fitness. In addition to that, I've been a fitness coach for quite a while. I've coached a lot of different YouTube celebrities, pro athletes, pro bodybuilders, a lot of people from around the world. I've been in online training for I think over 6 years now, and I've been in training in general for over 10 years. I'm an expert in body composition change, performance, and nutrition for autoimmune disorders. And I got into that because I am a sufferer of ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease. I'm also an NSCA and NASM certified personal trainer, and I'm a sports nutrition specialist. And I'm one of the co-founders of a little gym in Long Beach called Metroflex Gym in Long Beach. And that's where I coached a lot of athletes, including C.T. Fletcher, Mike Rashid, a few pro bodybuilders, some fighters, some NFL players, and things like that. And those are just some pictures of me. Don't worry about those. You want to go through your story a little bit and your background?
Yeah, so my name is Matt Cooper. You guys can call me Coop. It's what all my friends call me. I'm a certified nutritionist, trainer. I'm a researcher above all, and a biohacker, and bounced around the health and fitness industries for a little over a decade now in various aspects, from being a veteran of the nutritional supplement industry to being a coach like Chris and a trainer as well. I definitely think of myself as something of like a citizen scientist. Definitely kind of look at this whole thing as sort of like a practice, and I just look at myself as being someone who's a researcher in search of best practice. I have a similar background to Chris in that I thought I was doing everything right by the mainstream health and fitness standards, and I wound up crippling my own health using a lot of what Western medicine would represent, what mainstream health and fitness represents, would promote. And through that, I kind of had this situation where I had one side of myself who's more into training athletes and body transformations and that whole side of myself. And that's where I sort of started, from that fitness realm. And then it forced me to kind of become a researcher and learn things about, autoimmune conditions. In addition to that, too, functional medicine, how to kind of use more of guiding people towards principles of optimal health versus chasing the symptoms. And at any rate, through that, I basically have these two sides of myself where it's more like optimal health, functional medicine, biochem, and then the other side where I'm more versed in fitness, athletic training, things like that. I kind of look at it as like, the extremes inform the median, meaning that everybody kind of within that scope, which is probably most of you guys, can kind of borrow a little bit from each. I give nutrition seminars and health and fitness seminars, and I've been doing that for a while, whether it's in a corporate wellness setting for certain academic institutions or even certain just high schools, athletic teams, sports teams. In addition to that, I also do some consulting and educating and lecturing on health and nutrition in the addiction community. I'm also doing some work in that realm with Brian Freisinger of Cosmic Animal, particularly with genetics and then also the nervous system and how that relates. I do some health and fitness writing too through Max Sports and Fitness magazine, which is actually published through Max Muscle Sports Nutrition, which is actually now it's international nutrition franchise system. I mainly train athletes, individuals like yourselves, and then busy professionals. And I actually met Chris because Chris was originally my coach, and I met him through Metroflex.
Awesome. And Matt is an absolutely beautiful individual, really great guy. I've known him for a while now. We got some awesome pictures here. One thing about Matt, I had to dig this selfie of him up. You will not, unlike most fitness professionals, you will rarely find a picture of Matt without a shirt on, even though he's in great shape. And in this society, I think this Instagram-laden society, and I can't talk, I put tons of pictures of myself out there, but it's rare to find a trainer who was motivated both by the desire to look good in his clients, but also in helping them to be as healthy as possible. And it's really interesting over the past, I think, 5-6 years, given the rise of aesthetics popularly, I think we've gotten more and more away from health. And for myself, I was at one time so concerned with aesthetics that I really didn't care the impact of my health. I didn't care about the impact on the rest of my life. I didn't care that I was walking around brain dead half the time. And when my health kind of dragged me back toward examining what I was actually doing to my body, I was kind of at a loss. I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis shortly after I got out of the Marine Corps. I was exhibiting symptoms for quite a while, but I was obsessed with bodybuilding at the time. And I looked at bodybuilding as almost like my escape from normal life, where, I had been abusing alcohol. I had been dealing with some prescription drug addictions. I had a lot of issues in transitioning out of the military. I can't talk a lot of crap about bodybuilding because it is one of the things that saved me. It's one of the things that took me out of depression and took me away from some of the bad things I was doing. But when I got into it hardcore. And when even though I had ulcerative colitis and I knew somewhat about what that disease meant for me, I was not really paying attention to what I was doing to my body. I basically took the medication that was given to me by the Veterans Affairs Administration, mainly in a way to keep myself training, to allow myself to eat, 300, 400 grams of protein per day, to allow myself to do a lot of the things I was doing at the time. And my body eventually revolted and the medication wasn't working anymore. I was running to the bathroom 30 to 40 times a day. And not to get too graphic, but I was bleeding every time I was going to the bathroom, getting up from the toilet, seeing nothing but bright red blood everywhere. I started losing weight rapidly. And I came to ketosis out of desperation. Mainly because I couldn't sustain the amount of protein I was taking anymore. I couldn't do the 8 to 10 meals a day because every time I was eating, I was getting sick. And I got to the point where I was so desperate, I said to myself, all right, I'm going to pull everything back and I'm going to start by eating one meal a day. And I tried different formulations of that meal, but the one meal that wasn't making me sick was a combination of grass-fed beef, coconut oil, and vegetables. Now, keep in mind, at the time, I didn't know much about anything. I had been coaching clients as far as bodybuilding goes and fitness in general goes. But when you do your first personal training certifications and you go through the system of education that we have for fitness professionals right now, they really don't teach you about ketosis. In fact, everything that I knew at the time told me that if I did what I was doing, I was going to get skinny as hell. I was going to get skinny fat. My metabolism was going to shut down, and that I was going to eventually, not be a fit person anymore and not be able to do what I wanted to do. And so it was, in my mind, a big risk at the time. And so I went down to this meal. It didn't make me sick. So I upped it to about 2 of those meals a day. I added more coconut oil for calories. And a few weeks went by and I didn't lose any muscle. And my strength started going up. And I was completely astounded because I literally thought that I was going to lose everything. And I didn't tell anybody about it. And the reason why I didn't tell anybody about it was because at the time, this would have been ludicrous. If I came out on YouTube and said, hey guys, which I eventually did come out on YouTube and say this, but hey guys, I'm eating 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day, no carbs, and I'm building muscle and losing fat, people would have been, you're complete bullshit. What the hell are you talking about? There's no way that you're doing this. And so I would tentatively come out more and more and talk about it on YouTube. And then I got more and more into the research. I started reading a lot of the peer-reviewed research on ketosis, some of the work of Dr. Jeff Volek. I came into contact with some of Dominic D'Agostino's work. I looked at Volek and Finney's book, The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Performance. I began seeing other fitness professionals who were doing this. And in my own, and they were getting amazing results. And in my own results, like I said, I was getting stronger and bigger. And in this picture over here, I was actually a competitor last year in the first classic physique competition. And that was the first classic physique competition done in the United States. And I took second in a very large class, and I was eating one meal a day there. No carbs, lots of fat. And like I said, just following these ketogenic protocols that I'd laid out for myself. My body responded very well to it. But when you do ketosis properly, when you do a ketogenic diet properly, not only are you going to get these kinds of benefits, but you're also going to get a lot of really amazing mental benefits. My mental energy at the time, when I was doing 8 meals a day, I would feel, like I said, brain dead. If I didn't eat within 2 hours, I would get moody. I would get hypoglycemic. I would get, I wouldn't be able to think or finish sentences or anything like that. And when I was in ketosis, all of a sudden things became a lot easier. I was able to run my business better. I was able to formulate sentences better. I was able to have more energy throughout the day. I was able to train all my clients and come home, work on my online business, and train myself with what seemed like a lot less effort than I had when I was eating, 3,000, 4,000 calories a day. And we're starting to see more and more evidence for why this works and how it works. We've got studies like the recent one done by Jeff Volek and his team at Uconn. Now he's at the Ohio State University. But what he's found was that after studying extreme endurance athletes, separating them into 2 groups between high carb athletes and fat adapted athletes, they found that the fat adapted athletes actually have a much higher rate of fat oxidation. And what that means is that you're getting a constant stream of ketones. Ketones are broken down from your fat stores, converted by the liver into ketone bodies, and sucked up by the brain. To get glucose up to the brain, there's a lot of conversions that have to happen before it can actually be utilized. But with ketones, once they're in your bloodstream and they're at a high enough rate, you have a steady supply to your brain. And that's why the energy happens. Fat adapted athletes actually retain glycogen as well or better than glucose burning athletes. And that's why I was able to burn a lot of fat and retain so much muscle when I was training for that classic physique show. I'm not burning muscle when I'm dieting down. You go to any local bodybuilding show or any classic physique show on a local level, and you'll see guys who've dieted down from like 220 pounds, 210 pounds down to 180 pounds, and they look like, they're coming out of a concentration camp. They look emaciated, very little muscle left on what they put on during their bulk up phase. And when you look at a fat adapted athlete who's been doing this the proper way, they're still full, they're still very muscular, and you see a lot of the contours better. If you look at this study by Dr. Jeff Volek and his team, you'll see not only are they able to oxidize fat better, not only are they able to retain glycogen better, but they were able to perform as well or better than the carb adapted athletes. So what does this mean for you, the average person who's sitting and watching this at home? And it means that ketosis can lead to steadier energy. A lot of people don't like dieting because they feel like it's going to affect their job. It's going to affect their time with their family. It's going to affect their overall performance in life. And when you are adapted into ketosis, you actually have something that's very sustainable that can actually make you better at a lot of different aspects of your life. It can give you a lot more brain energy, more strength endurance, and you're not going to lose a lot of that hard-earned muscle mass that you worked to put on in the gym. And if you are somebody who's, say, obese and really, really trying to lose weight, give you a much better and healthier way of mobilizing your own fat stores for your own purposes, rather than starving out muscle mass and starving out your glycogen supply that's supposed to be going to your brain. But you're probably sitting there and you're probably wondering, I'm talking about this high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet, but everything in your life has told you if you eat a lot of fat, you're going to get high cholesterol, you're going to get heart disease. And if you're eating a lot of fat, you're going to get fat as well. And if you don't eat carbs, you're going to lose muscle. And despite everything I'm telling you right now, you're probably saying, all right, well, that worked for him, but it sounds like a load of crap. So what we're going to try and do here is give you a lot of different pieces of evidence. We're going to answer a lot of your questions. We're going to try to allay your fears about this protocol and paradigm. Matt, you got anything to add to that, buddy?
Yeah, just kind of looping back on the fact that we're not the keto guys. We look at it as a way to, for ourselves, we both do variations of that. We look at it as sort of a metabolic platform that you can operate out of from there. Ideally, you're always on some type of protocol that has you in a fat adapted state. And you can kind of scale that depending on things like your age, your goal, your health, genetic predispositions, and things like that. But what I look at keto as is a way to, it's almost like what CrossFit is for women. Now, CrossFit gets hated on a lot, but the reality is that I think I've seen more women introduced to strength training with CrossFit as a gateway drug. And that's a really good thing, ultimately, no matter what you think about CrossFit, weight training, or anything else. I'm personally a fan of Zumba if it gets people off the couch. Keto is kind of the same thing. I think everyone's physiology, it's basically been proven as much as you can prove something in science that you should be in a fat adapted state. And from there, depending on the person's physiology, you can remain in a full-on ketogenic state, or you can evolve out of that, right? You can do variations of ketosis, or you can do, modified Atkins diets, but you at least want to make sure that your body's in a fat adapted state for everything from, preventing disease to optimizing your health, mental and physiological performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I like to say is that if there is ever a zombie apocalypse, the first people to die, it's not even going to be the people in the nursing homes or the people in the hospitals. The first people to die are going to be bodybuilders from the top 5 of the NPF. And the reason is because if they don't eat within 2 hours, their brain's going to bomb. And these zombies are going to be out there, going to be like, oh my God, well, look at all that muscle mass, and they're going to go after the muscle mass. But yeah, if you're thinking about things from an evolutionary standpoint, if we're going to be looking to leverage our own evolutionary advantages, probably want to look to something that's going to allow you to have sustained energy without having to eat every 2 hours, without having to eat, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day, or even 3 times a day. It's really something that can work to your advantage if you are mobilizing your own fat source for energy.
Yeah, and on that note too, speaking of like the mainstream's misinterpretation of ketosis, one thing I will see is people still doing things like eating every 2 to 3 hours and things like that too. I think, not to segue for too long, but minimizing the amount of times you're eating during the day is generally a good idea. I personally would recommend eating like 2 to 3 meals potentially. Women seem to do better on 3. A lot of men can do just fine on 2, sometimes even 1, depending on the person. You also can essentially time that as well, depending on whether you're training or not. But I think if you look at the way that, from what we know of how we actually evolved, I think that system of eating better parallels how we more than likely evolved to be able to tolerate food, because when you look at it, it's probably more likely that we had to skip a full day, let alone a meal. At least our ancestors did. So I think spending less time in a fed state and more time in a fasted or a non-fed state is probably a bit better for your genetics and for your body and health at a cellular level too.
Absolutely. And it gets back to inflammation. A lot of people talk about foods that are inflammatory, but regardless of what you're putting through your digestive tract, carbs are inflammatory, but so is protein and fat. Any macronutrient that you're putting through your digestive tract is going to cause some level of inflammation. So the less times you're eating per day, the more rest you're giving to your digestive tract, the less inflammation you're introducing into that system. And remember that system also connected to your brain, and it's also connected to your body, and it also houses your immune system. So the more damage you're putting onto your intestinal tract, the more issues you're going to have with neurological disorders, the more issues you're going to have with heart disease, and the more issues you're going to have with health in general.
Yeah.
So that's something you always have to remember. But getting back to this big question here, if you're going to be eating a lot of fat, is that going to cause a rise in cholesterol? And is this going to cause heart disease? And one thing that we really need to examine here is what does the evidence say? What does the actual evidence say about eating fat? Well, you have a whole lot of epidemiological studies that have been done over the last 50 years. You had a very one-sided view of nutrition that was developed starting in the 1950s, with work keys and demonized fat. But we're starting to get into human subject studies. And when Dr. Jeff Volek, who we mentioned earlier, he and his team, they actually took a group of 16 overweight individuals, and they took their cholesterol from baseline, which is important because if you're not taking the cholesterol from baseline, you actually don't know what the changes are, right? You don't know what the changes are from as far as changes in the lipid profile in the blood. So they took the cholesterol reading at baseline, they introduced a bunch of fat into the diet. And what they found was that fat didn't raise the lipid profile in the blood whatsoever. But after a while, and this is not a cross-sectional study, this is going over time, they introduced some carbohydrates just to see what the change would be. And as they introduced carbohydrates along with that fat, cholesterol profile started going up. And it correlated perfectly with the amount of carbohydrate that was introduced. So the more carbohydrate that was introduced into that diet, the higher the cholesterol readings went up. And so what does this mean? And we have that over here. It was one of his students. I think her name was Brittany Volk, and Dr. Jeff Volek was on the team. It was from 2014. And I can get you these studies if you want here. The results show that dietary and plasma saturated fat are not related, and that increasing dietary carbohydrate across a range of intakes promotes incremental increases in plasma palmitoleic acid, a biomarker consistently associated with adverse health outcomes. So the moral of the story based on this study is that dietary fat doesn't cause fat in the bloodstream to rise, but high carbohydrate intake can. Now, this is a single study, but we've also had a lot of recent epidemiological studies over the last 5 years that have demonstrated that there is no relationship between fat intake and heart disease. And while I'm not a fan of basing a lot of assumptions off of a single study or on epidemiological studies, when we have the combination of the two showing us that fat generally doesn't cause any sort of issues with heart disease when not combined with carbohydrate, I really think that we're getting evidence pointing us in a pretty specific direction. And that's saying that, fat isn't the demon that we once thought it was, and it can actually be very helpful for us. Matt, do you have anything to add to that? And I know you wanted to go over the next section here. Also, let me real quick just check and see if there's any questions here. Are there any questions on Facebook so far?
No, I just refreshed. There's nothing going on there besides viewers.
Cool. All right. So, Matt, I know you want to go over this section.
Yeah, essentially, I think what we're going to find is not more like avoid carbs, although in certain cases, autoimmune conditions can preclude you from, getting in some regular consumption of carbs, particularly mainly grains. But in addition to that, too, what we're finding is, especially if you follow the work of somebody like Dr. Seafried or the fine folks, including Dr. Dominic D'Agostino in Florida, is essentially that a lot of the diseases and their pathophysiological tendencies are that of glycolysis. And that means that they are more carbohydrate driven. And it's not to say that carbohydrates are evil at all. It's just that in certain conditions, restricting their intake or limiting them in some capacity, and also in addition to that, preventing yourself from overfeeding in general, which is easier to do on carbohydrates, can actually prevent feeding into some of these disease pathways too. So I think that's probably really interesting to me. That would be the metabolic therapy application of ketosis. And in addition to that too, for athletic performance as well, I think one thing that I'd like to say, because again, getting back to the fact that I have worked with people who have autoimmune conditions and neurodegenerative disorders, Neolithic diseases, but I've also worked with athletes too, is that health, fitness, Western medicine tends to take a fragmented view of what health and fitness really is. And I really think that we need to start looking at these things as not being mutually exclusive. And I know for people like you and me, and maybe some of our more advanced listeners, that doesn't sound like a revelation, but I think the reality is that health drives performance. And these things, like you might change how you're training and things like that, whether you're a housewife or a pro athlete, but, at some level, the pro athletes need to be making sure that they're being mindful of things like, opening themselves up for autoimmune conditions and things like that in the future. Whereas maybe, the stay-at-home mom would do better with a little bit more strength work like an athlete would have in every team. So anyways, not to get off the point there, but as far as fat goes, I think this is one huge distinction with what Chris and I are recommending with our variation of nutritional ketosis, or really any diet we're going to be recommending, and what the mainstream recommends. I see a lot of mainstream adaptations of ketosis, more of looking at ketosis in the fragmented view itself, as far as like a ratio, like, oh, that's the diet where you just go high fat, moderate protein, and avoid carbs. And now that the fitness community has kind of got their hands on it, that's where you see it going. When in reality, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to other elements too, whether it's certain, biomarkers, making sure you're sleeping well, but also just as simple as food, to stay on the point there, making sure that your foods are coming from the right places. So I always tell my clients, when you're shopping in the grocery store, think you are what you eat has eaten. And the reason for that is because whatever conditions that animal was raised in, whether, there was toxins there, whether it was fed properly, like, grass fed, if it's fish, wild caught, so on and so forth, that ultimately is going to impact you. So you want to make sure that the nutrients that are getting passed on to you are coming from the right place. Back in our grandparents' days, they didn't have food and organic food. They just had food, right? So getting back to aiming for nutrient quality, I'd like to drive in the point that certain fats can actually make you fat, and they can drive inflammation as well. Common industrial seed oils. So that would be things like soybean oil, canola oil, vegetable oils. In addition to that too, meat fat, if it's coming from a meat that was, hormonally infused and modulated. In addition to that too, fat on meats that were fed potentially toxic grains also, that's ultimately going to be passed on to you and can not only drive up your toxic load, mess with your health and fitness, but in addition to that too, it can also mess with your health and fitness through modulating hormones in an unfavorable capacity. So in addition to that, you want to make sure that you're thinking in terms of like constellations and how these things relate to each other. So when you're starting a ketogenic diet, make sure that you're still paying attention where some of these things are coming from. That's actually why Chris and I created a lot of free resources, including grocery lists for you guys.
Yeah, and just to emphasize that point, if I don't know if any of you out there are hunters, but there's bear hunters up in Alaska. When they're going out and they're searching for bears, they try to stay away from bears that are near the coast. And the reason why they try to stay away from bears that are near the coast, especially when they're first coming out of hibernation, is because at that point, the fish they're eating from the coast is going to be rotten. They might be picking some stuff up off the shore, some things that have beached itself, some diseased fish, and the meat will taste like that. But what they try to go for are bears that are inland near the blueberry bushes. And the most coveted bear meat is called blueberry bear meat. And it's actually purple. And it has this amazing flavor that almost tastes like blueberries. And so that's just to drive that point home. When you're eating cattle that have been fed, genetically modified grain, or grain that's really high in omega-6, which raises levels of inflammation, rather than like a grass-fed cow that's got a higher omega-3 profile and hasn't been hormonally treated, you're eating what that animal ate. And that is also going into your own fat. So that's a point to emphasize there. This is another study here on the long-term effects of ketogenic diets on obese patients. And it says, the present study shows the beneficial effects of a long-term ketogenic diet. It significantly reduced the body weight and body mass index of the patients. Furthermore, it decreased the level of triglycerides, LDL cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and blood glucose, and increased levels of HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol. Administering a ketogenic diet for a relatively longer period of time did not produce any significant side effects in the patients. Therefore, the present study confirms it is safe to use a ketogenic diet for a longer period of time than previously demonstrated. So again, a properly structured high-fat ketogenic diet is not going to get you fat. It'll help you to burn fat. This is just an example of a...
Just before we move on to one thing I'd like to point out is that Chris and I have outlined what labs are relevant on a ketogenic diet and what biomarkers you guys are going to want to pay attention to. And for those of you fitness industry folks, it does extend beyond just simple body fat percentage. In addition to that too, I'd also like to point out that when you're looking at cholesterol, whether it's the good cholesterol, HDL, or high density lipoprotein, or whether it's LDL, or traditionally thought of as the bad cholesterol or low density lipoprotein, you definitely need the proper ratio of those. But I don't want you to think that just because LDL is looked at as being bad, quote unquote, that you have to avoid it. You really need levels of both. And there are more important biomarkers to look at with heart disease, including certain inflammatory markers as well.
Absolutely. Your C-reactive protein is going to be probably one of the biggest markers of whether or not you're in danger of having heart disease. Cholesterol, if your cholesterol is high, but your good cholesterol is also high, that's a good thing. But you really want to be looking at your inflammatory markers based off of your C-reactive protein. If you're going to be, are there any other tests that you'd recommend there?
Yeah, HSCRP, which is highly sensitive C-reactive protein. Just for, other inflammasomes too. I also recommend cytokines. I'd recommend IL-6, interleukins. We have the rest of the panels too. You'd want on your standard metabolic panel, hormone panels. And then if you are somebody who's looking at ketosis from the perspective of reclaiming your health, I'd also recommend getting a test from Ubiome, which is actually a stool sample. Not to be gross, it's where you're going to be pooping in a hot dog box and sending it off to them. So there is that. Believe it or not, too, one thing that I'm really big on with my clients is actually getting a neurotransmitter test as well. And that's to see what your levels and balances or imbalances of neurotransmitters are at. And from there, we can actually potentially unlock a lot of more of the mental performance and even physiological performance if you follow the work of Dr. Pat Davidson, with a proper balance of neurotransmitters too. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole now. There are plenty of other biomarkers in general to look at, but as far as like the inflammatory ones, I would say start with CRP and HSCRP.
Cool. This is just an example of.
And we'll link to some of this in the show notes too.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put that out. This is just an example of a client I've had. I worked with her over a period of a year, and she's a really awesome person. This is Cindy. When she started out, she tried a lot of different types of diets and just introducing fats in general into her diet through coconut oil and grass-fed beef, properly pastured eggs, things like that. Really made a difference for her. Today, she's competed in figure shows since then. She's competing as a power lifter right now, smashing weights over there at Metroflex Gym in Long Beach. So, just want to check and see if there's any other questions that have come up. Anything on Facebook?
No, I just checked actually. You want me to take this one?
Yeah. This is a really big question that people have, because when you take away their carbs, they start to get flat a little bit, and they're wondering about that muscle mass. So
yeah. So that's probably, at least amongst the fitness community, the biggest question that I get is, aren't I going to shrivel up and die? It's almost like people expect like some Russian nesting doll type situation. They start the ketogenic diet, which is going to shed their skin like a snake and then have a smaller version of themselves. You will at some level with fat, but at the same time, you're not going to lose muscle mass. Again, you want to kind of also think just restricting carbs is not going to do that. You're still eating a sufficient amount of calories overall. In addition to that as well, the reality is that just physiologically, a ketogenic diet is actually going to feed a lot of your hormonal pathways too by supplying your body with a sufficient level of fat. And it's kind of the opposite of what a lot of the health and fitness industry has talked about for so long. Kind of like yourself, I've never had a desire to compete in fitness competitions. I respect the hell out of what goes into it. But I was actually working for Hani Rambod, who is Phil Heath's trainer. And that was awesome. And that's a great experience. Those guys are good friends of mine. But in being around that community, not Phil or Hani specifically, but in being around a lot of that community, such as when we go to the Olympia, which is, if you guys haven't been there before, it's kind of like the Coachella for meatheads. That essentially, you'd see a lot of these guys that look like they're just ready to pass out. A lot of them have these just carb and protein based meals, probably all, genetically modified. It's not organic. And these guys are sort of just eating and then kind of passing out and sort of sputtering. A lot of that's actually driven from the fact that not just they're calorie restricted for a significantly long amount of time, but they also just have such a low level of fat that their hormones and their brains to some degree haven't really been fed what they need in such a long time. So anyways, we can actually riff on that for a while, but the point being, if you're executing it properly, and ideally you are following some type of, in a perfect world, macronutrient setup, the right threshold of calories, right ratio of protein, carbs, and fat, you are not to worry about losing muscle mass. However, for those of you who want something simple that you can scale, you can kind of set that up initially. And with a lot of my clients, especially just everyday people, they tend to do better with a palm-sized portion of X, Y, and Z. I like to give people a size reference chart where they can actually compare common household items to pieces of food. But that being said, again, if you're eating a sufficient ratio and a sufficient level of calories, and building muscles is one of your goals, you can actually do that on ketosis too. And again, just to loop back for a moment, you can still eat carbs, including blood sugar impacting carbs on ketosis. We just want to optimize when that is and make sure that when you're having carbs, you're earning them.
Yeah. A lot of people in bodybuilding, they'll confuse a ketogenic diet with what they're doing. And what they're doing is normally doing a really, really high protein diet, and they're going low carb and low fat. And so basically they're fueling their entire body off of protein, which is bad. And the reason why that's bad is because in order to convert to energy, protein goes through a process called gluconeogenesis. And when you're going through gluconeogenesis, which means that the body's going to try to convert something to energy. If it can't get fat, it can't get glucose. So it's going to go for protein. And what that means is that it's going to be focusing on not only the protein you're eating, but it'll also go for your muscle mass, and it'll try to convert some of the muscle tissue into energy. That's where you see a lot of these emaciated bodybuilders, these guys that look like they came out of a concentration camp. And it's because those guys aren't on the performance enhancements like the pros are, and they are loading themselves up with protein, and they're converting that to energy. But not only that, they're also converting a lot of that protein into sulfur and ammonia and a lot of toxic substances that are being stored in the liver and the kidneys.
And those can actually overexcite your nerves too, depending on your genetic predispositions. So if you're having problems thinking straight, a lot of that could be, let's say you are on you're not eating a ton of carbs and it's still happening. It could be because your protein thresholds are too high. And what that could do is not only cause gluconeogenesis, which is where the fact that protein is moderately insulinogenic plays a role in elevating your blood sugar because you're consuming too much. And that can kind of make you feel like you're mentally sputtering. But in addition to that too, if you are converting it to ammonia and potentially sulfur, you can actually negatively impact your nervous system to the point to where you kind of overexcite your nerves and you kind of almost feel a fatigue, not unlike adrenal burnout. In fact, it has been demonstrated in some cases that elevated levels of protein can cause stress on the adrenal glands too.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one thing we see about the ketogenic diet is that it's been applied in a lot of areas to preserve muscle mass. It's actually been applied to cancer patients to reduce muscle wasting. And significant studies have been done on the effect of ketogenic dieting on skeletal muscle mass. And this study here, it says the results indicate that a very low carbohydrate ketogenic diet may have more favorable changes in lean body mass, muscle mass, and body fatness as compared to a traditional Western diet in resistance training males. Matt, this is one of your clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Showing all the muscle he's lost since restricting his carbohydrates. Now, Triton actually, he's a client of mine, and he's a hard worker. You know, I give all my clients the credit because I'm the one who's sort of just giving them the compass. They're the ones who are doing it day in and day out, and Triton is a brilliant example of that, and he's become a close friend. So Triton's setup, just to let you guys know, because I believe in full transparency, he actually fasts for 16 hours a day, in addition to restricting his carbohydrates to some extent. Now, Triton actually still eats starchy carbohydrates such as rice, potatoes, and he's still living life. He's still getting in his favorite foods. But at the same time, I'm timing when we're doing those strategically, so I know that his muscles are actually going to be using them to refill glycogen stores rather than just letting a lot of carbs float around rather uselessly in his bloodstream. So you'll see this transformation right here over the course of about, I want to say this one's like getting closer to 10, 12 weeks. But if you look at the first and third picture, he actually was able to get there in 6 weeks. Now, he was combining this with sleeping well and also with, a certain resistance training protocol. But at the same time, he's not doing anything that's, I would call unreasonable. He's not living in the gym. He's in the gym 3 days a week. He exercises 5, but that's because he likes taking his dogs for a walk and maybe catching a yoga class or 2. So fitness is not really something he's slaving over. He only eats 2 to, sometimes 3 meals a day. And so not only is he getting these results, he's actually through kind of hacking his diet with a combination of intermittent fasting and ketosis, he's actually able to experience more dietary, social, and lifestyle freedom than he's ever had. I will say this too, you can't expect this with everyone. However, we did get his testosterone levels to drive up really high on this type of protocol. And then again, that's someone who's not chemically enhanced.
This is a big question that comes up, and and to some extent these fears are well founded, but people wonder, are you going to feel like crap with no carbs? And it's actually true, but you have to go through a period of what we call keto-adaptation. Should only be for a short period of time, about 5 to 14 days. And with some people, it takes a little bit longer than that. But it's known as the keto flu, and it occurs during the adaptation phase of the diet. And the reason why it happens is because your body's literally switching fuel systems. So it's going from burning glucose to burning ketones, and you have to give it some time to be able to do that. You have to get the ketones in the bloodstream up to a certain point in order to be able to do this. So while we're able to take a lot of liberties once we're adapted, like Triton did as far as adding some starchy carbs to the diet. And one of the things Matt and I do when we're talking to people is we teach people about different options when it comes to ketosis. There's not just the general ketogenic diet. You could do what's called a cyclical ketogenic diet, where you're actually including carbs at specific periods of time to leverage them to replenish your glycogen levels. You do have to go through a little bit of time where you're adapting, and during this time, this is when the diet's at its strictest. And so one of the things we're trying to do with educating people is teaching people how to get through that process as quickly as possible without going through the headaches, without going through a lot of the really crappy feeling that you have. And there's certain techniques that you can use in order to get your ketosis a lot quicker. But that's one of the bigger problems that people face when they're trying the ketogenic diet, is that they'll try it for like 2 or 3 days, And when they reduce their carbohydrate levels, they'll start to feel like crap. Or a big mistake that they do is they try to gradually reduce your carb levels. And once you get down past a certain point, your carb threshold might still be too high to get into ketosis, but you're still feeling the energy deficit from the reduced carbs. You're actually extending that adaptation phase a bit. And so one thing we definitely recommend is kind of ripping off the Band-Aid quickly and going right into a very strict ketogenic diet for the adaptation period before we can get into the actual, cyclical ketogenic dieting or leveraging a general ketogenic diet for your benefits. Because once you're adapted, you're going to feel absolutely great. Matt, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, with anything, right, you're doing this diet not because you want to get ready for vacation, although it can definitely help you with that. You're doing it because you want to shift over into a nutritional lifestyle. So, if you're watching this and you're wondering, what is the biggest, I would say, advantage to this, rather than focusing on, we bring fat or, mental and energy benefits, think of it this way. This is going to be a diet that you can actually continue and sustain. That's not going to become torture at any level. It's not going to come and bite you in the butt later because it's too extreme. There are scalable options, as Chris just touched on with it. And whether you're an athlete or somebody who has an autoimmune condition or just someone in between who just simply wants to look and feel better and add some years to your life and life to your years, getting on a ketogenic diet with the proper foods being sourced can actually really unlock a lot of dietary freedom and thus a lot more lifestyle sustainability.
Awesome. So keys to success with a ketogenic diet. The biggest thing, like we said in the beginning, is you really want to pay attention to your food sourcing. That's really, really important. You want to make sure that you're getting good quality food. You want to make sure that you're trying to avoid the factory raised cattle that are being fed a lot of toxins and things like that. You also really want to make sure that you're not just eating a salami and cheese diet. You want to be getting your vegetables in. You want to make sure that you're getting some good food in. The basic rules of nutrition are going to apply. And when I talk about the basic rules of nutrition, I'm talking about two things mainly. One, you want to make sure that you're eating nutritionally dense food. That means you're getting a good micronutrient profile to fight off free radicals, to fight off cytokines, and to keep yourself healthy. And then two, you really want to be paying attention to your digestibility, making sure you're taking care of your gut, making sure that you're getting some fermented foods in, like sauerkraut and kimchi and kombucha, and eating prebiotic foods that are going to seed your gut with good bacteria, things like including some leafy greens in there and some good herbs and things like that are going to set you up with a really good gut microbiome. The second thing is you want to keep food groups ancestral. Matt, you want to explain what we mean by ancestral?
Yeah, ancestral, not incestual, first of all. Second of all, yeah, so ancestral eating. Chris and I try to stay away from the word paleo not because we're not fans of it, but because everybody thinks of that diet as being, that's where you only eat meat and vegetables. And to be quite honest with you, I'm kind of tired of people saying the paleo diet is something where it's a diet where you don't do this or don't do that. Really, it's what paleo or ancestral or primal eating is it's eating more as we evolved to eat, essentially, and focusing on nutrient-dense foods. So in a nutshell, you're eliminating foods that have, empty calories or zero nutritional value. You're focusing on foods that are nutrient dense, and you're using that as sort of your North Star, if you will. It's not that you can't ever have grains or can't ever, have something that was processed, because the reality is that a lot of foods are processed by design. So I want people to stop thinking about paleo as a sort of like orthodox thing and think of it like this, you want to operate out of principles rather than methods. And the reality is that the mainstream health and fitness community, whether it's paleo or keto, they look at the method and they look at the black box theory, like, if I do these things, like this ratio, I'll get this result. And they don't really focus on what's going on inside or the why or the biological underpinnings of it all. So with ancestral eating, in paleo, you want to think of it like that too. You want to think of it as sort of like a space or a concept to operate out of. And then within that framework, you have a lot of different areas to branch off to from there. So at any rate, just to kind of give you a takeaway, you're focusing on foods in ancestral eating that are nutrient dense. I would say try to get at least 80% of your food coming from something like that. You're also going to pretty much always want to avoid certain toxins. And Chris and I are going to give you guys who are on this webinar free setup guides on how to do that.
You really want to make sure you're structuring your training properly, especially during the adaptation phase. The week you're going to be adapting, it's probably not a week you want to go and do a marathon or, compete in a jiu-jitsu tournament or do a powerlifting meet. You really want to give your body some time to adapt. And so during that week, you're probably going to want to reduce your exercise volume. You're going to want to, make sure you're moving, make sure that you're moving around and keep your activity levels high, because that's going to help to level out your insulin levels and it's going to help you to adapt more. But you don't want to be doing anything where you're going to expect yourself to be operating at your max, because if you are, you're going to be disappointed, right? You got to give your energy system some time to adapt through. Once you're adapted, you want to make sure that you're training properly. You want to make sure that you're keeping your volumes up, and you want to make sure that you're moving throughout the day. So if you're working for 12 hours a day and you're sitting at a desk and you're not moving at all, you want to do things like get up every 15 minutes and just move around your office. After you eat lunch, you want to go for a 15-20 minute walk, just to try to level out your insulin levels. And these things you should be doing whether you're on a ketogenic diet or not, because the more we're sitting, the more we're just hanging out there, the more we're allowing insulin to get out of control in our bodies, and the less insulin sensitive we are. So you really want to be paying attention to that stuff.
Go ahead. Yeah. We're doing dance here. Anyways, one thing before we transition I wanted to hit on, and this is a takeaway for you guys watching, is that when you're adapting, you're going to want to make sure you're eating at least 100 grams of fat or more. I know most guys, if you're setting it up, that's going to come out, if you're setting up a ratio, especially what Chris and I have given you as a rubric for that, you're going to come out that way. But I've seen a lot of women try to transition into a ketogenic diet using less than 100 grams of fat per day. That is probably not going to work. In my experience, women tend to work a lot better with making sure they're getting at least 100 grams of fat a day or above. There could be, once you keto adapt, maybe some of the days where you're reintroducing carbs, they're under that threshold. But you'll hear Dr. Dominic D'Agostino talk about this a lot too. And in that adaptation phase, that's going to be pretty key. The second thing I'd like to touch on is that for a lot of you, it will be a week. For some of you, it might be 10 to 14 days. And for some of you, it could be longer than that, particularly those who are really in more of kind of more of an obese state starting out. In addition to that, too, what I would also say is with what Chris was saying as well, if you guys want to optimize your blood glucose levels, getting sunlight every day, ideally in as little clothing as possible, making sure that you're avoiding sort of artificial light, like looking at a computer screen like Chris and I are doing now, after hours, or your television set or anything like that, making sure that you're not sort of shutting down your melatonin production so you can't sleep. These things all are going to have a cumulative effect on your blood sugar levels too. And some of you more so than others might have susceptibility here depending on your genetic variants, including certain genes that they call clock genes as well. So again, taking a panoramic view, making sure that you're, sleeping in a pitch black room, eliminating noise, unplugging devices that are near your bed too. Some of you might be what you call EMF sensitive. So as far as right now, I would say simple things you can do are setting up anti-blue light settings on your phone to kick in after, let's say, nightfall or evening time. Your phone in airplane mode, turning off cell data, turning off, Bluetooth, turning off Wi-Fi connectivity. These things are actually going to help you more than you know. I would say if you can also in your adaptation phase and just in general, start doing that, that's key. Myself and others actually hypothesize that Wi-Fi technology, artificial light, and mismanagement of that technology and not sort of taking the right precautions is going to be the asbestos of our generation too. So do yourself a favor, no matter what diet you're on, and make sure that you properly, biohack your home and technology.
Yeah, and as far as the diet goes, you want to make sure that you are following some sort of macro profile, but we also want to make sure that you're allowing for a margin of error, because one thing, I think we're getting more and more towards a tendency to be obsessive about what we're eating and plugging in numbers into cell phones and things like that, which is awesome. I think everybody should be mindful of what we put in our mouths. But at the same time, I think that drives people away from diets, and it drives people away from nutrition, because they feel like they have to be obsessive about it. They feel like they have to program everything in. And if we're not programming everything in, and if we're not quantifying everything, then we're screwing up. And I don't think that's really the way we're meant to live. And one of the big benefits of ketosis is that you do have a margin for error. And say if you screw up and your carb thresholds are a little bit high that day, there are ways of correcting for it, by increasing your activity levels, by fasting, by doing things like that. And these are all tools that we want to introduce to you, so that you can adapt to this lifestyle a little bit better, and not consider it a temporary diet that you're just going to be doing so that you could look good on the beach once. We want you to be able to live healthy for the rest of your lives, and to be doing so effortlessly. So that's a big thing for us. We talked a little bit about some problems with getting into ketosis, like the pain of adaptation and the difficulty of maintaining the diet, and dealing with some of the misinformation that's out there. But just want to go quickly over this. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, just another 10 minutes. When we think about adaptation, some of the things that you could experience while you're going through that period, you can get headaches, you can get inconsistency, diminished exercise performance, carb failures, dizziness, trouble focusing, irritability, sleep issues, and digestive disruptions. And the reason why we're telling you this is because we don't want you to try it and then be like, oh my God, they're trying to poison me, or this diet's crap. And that's not what it is at all. It's really, you're withdrawing off of the carbohydrates that you've been putting in your body for however many years you've been alive. And two, your body's going to take some time to adapt to its new fuel source. And there's some specific things that you can do, like I said, to reduce the amount of pain you go through in adaptation. That includes keeping your fat levels high, eating enough calories, making sure that you're getting a good profile of minerals in your diet, making sure that you're staying hydrated, making sure that you're getting enough rest, keeping your activity levels up, but not doing too much activity. And a few other tools and tricks that are out there, like exogenous ketones and MCT oil, and including those in the diet, including coconut oil in the diet, to get what they call medium chain triglycerides. These are fatty acids that go around your liver and get right into the bloodstream, so that you can have a steady fuel supply. So there are ways of getting through it easier, and these are tools that we definitely want to introduce to you. Matt, you want to talk a little bit about maintenance?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys heard me touch on this earlier a little bit. The keto diet, for a lot of people, I think draws a lot of ire. People who kind of think of it as being touted as like more just like a label, or like a one size fits all kind of thing, which unfortunately you're hearing right now. Chris and I have made perfectly clear that even though we're promoting ketosis and nutritional ketosis, we're promoting it as one method or modality, optimized physiology. We're not promoting it as a one size fits all system. That being said, you might think that a diet that eliminates one food group is rather unsustainable, but that's simply not the case. The reality is that, as we've touched on in various capacities, whether it's reintroducing carbs in smaller amounts here and there, almost like a targeted ketogenic diet, or allowing just sort of a little bit more for lifestyle adherence, kind of going off track on purpose with carbohydrate reloading, like what Lyle McDonald would outline in a cyclic ketogenic diet, or Dan Duchaine or Dr. Mario Di Pasquale did. You're not really eliminating a food group. And then the other reality too is that you're not restricting all carbs. In fact, fibrous carbs like vegetables such as broccoli, for instance, those are things that you're able to have in abundance. And I see a lot of people in the mainstream looking at keto, and they're mainly just eating protein and they're eating fat. They're not really paying attention to vegetable intake, or if they are, if anything, they're restricting it. And those are not the carbs that you want to restrict, because they are not going to cause that same blood sugar impact at all. In fact, you're going to want to give yourself a license to eat pretty much, I don't want to say as much vegetables as you want, because that can throw off your digestive tract, but you're going to want to eat those in abundance. And at the end of the day, if you're looking at your plate by sheer food volume, meaning as far as what takes up the biggest portion of your plate, you're going to want that to be vegetables. In addition to that too, social situations. So you can actually plan your carbohydrate intakes or your diet schedule based around social situations more adequately. And whether you're traveling or whether you're going out to eat, believe it or not, eating keto is actually pretty easy too. And for that reason, Chris and I actually created some cheat sheets for that, or for keto recipes too.
Yeah.
One of my clients I also want to shout out to, Steven Singleton. If you're in the Northern California area, he's actually going to be starting up a combination paleo keto nutrition food prep company too. So that'll be an access for some of you guys who are always on the go, or just aren't very creative in the kitchen.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. In today's society, I mean, you can go to almost any restaurant and you can find meat and vegetables. Of course, like I said, you want to be wary of the sourcing of that meat in particular. But you could at least find a salad. And one thing about vegetables is that they're a really good vehicle for getting fat in your diet, meaning that if you're eating a bunch of vegetables, you can get coconut oil on them, you can get olive oil on them, you can saute them in butter. They're a really good way of getting more fats into your diet if you're combining them with fats.
And also, yeah, again, the absorption rate goes up when you combine those two.
Absolutely. And as with anything in the fitness industry, there's going to be a lot of misinformation out there. And so we want you guys to be wary of that. We want you to be wary of a lot of the things you're going to come in contact with. People are going to say you need to restrict all carbs, including vegetables. Like Matt just said, that's not necessary. If you're eating fibrous carbs, they can actually add to your health. They can add to the viability of the diet. They can make the diet more sustainable, and they make it healthier. You can't eat all the meat and protein you want. And Gabe, like I just saw your comment on Facebook. No, we can't. I'm sorry, it's not a salami and cheese diet. You wanna make sure that you're getting things like grass-fed beef, free-range chicken, and things like that in your diet. But by no means is this a high-protein diet. And in fact, you could actually follow a ketogenic diet very successfully as a vegan if you wanted to. By including a lot of vegetables, some coconut oil, some sources of fat from nuts and things like that. And I think it's a very big misconception that vegan eating and keto eating are opposed to each other. They're really not. People who follow a ketogenic diet are actually less, they're not big meat eaters. And if you're doing it doing the diet the proper way, you're not going to be eating slabs of steak and tons of ground beef and things like that. So,
or if you are, you're eating that like at one serving a day, or like 1.5, you know what I mean? You're not throwing it, you're not piling it on.
Yeah, you're eating it like one serving a day at like maybe 4 to 6 ounces. You're not eating 10 ounces of beef or anything like that.
Yeah. Keto eating too for vegans, if any of you are watching are vegan, there tends to be this 2-year honeymoon phase with being a vegan where you feel amazing. And then as you sort of deprogram your genetics that are fat adapted and also kind of mess up your hormones and some of your, your body's inflammatory levels a bit, vegan eating can be really unsustainable. So if you are watching this and you are considering a vegetarian or a vegan diet, really doing it in, I'll say keto or at least a fat adapted state is really the only way that's going to be sustainable long term, because the fat intake is going to provide you with a lot of that positive benefit that you would normally get from eating good quality meat. So I'm not here to talk you into eating vegan or not, but if you are going to eat vegan, you need to really make sure that your fat intake's up and strongly consider keto or some variation of that if you want to be on this long term.
Absolutely. And then the question comes up, who is the ketogenic diet not suited for? And you know, I catch flack from this from other keto advocates, but I don't recommend this diet to everybody. You know, if you're a high school athlete in particular, I think your insulin sensitivity is probably really high, especially if you're athletic and you've got a normal body mass index. Your insulin sensitivity is to the point where you're in that window of your life where you can eat carbs and you can use them for your benefit, and you probably eat them throughout the day. So I'm not going to take that away from a high school athlete, and it's not something that I'm going to recommend right off the bat. Of course, there's no blanket statement there. There are some high school athletes who might benefit great from it, but in general, if you're a high school athlete, I'm not going to recommend it. Similarly, probably up through college, you know, I'm not going to automatically recommend a ketogenic diet to somebody who's a college athlete or anything like that. You know, Matt, do you have any other things to add there?
Yeah, for sure. So ketogenic diet, if you are on that younger side and you have lost your insulin sensitivity sooner, you know, if you are more obese, we've actually seen, again, you know, you want to educate yourself and also consult with a qualified healthcare practitioner. But a combination of the ketogenic diet and maybe a little bit of fasting, exogenous ketone supplementation, paleo, primal eating is actually being used to help children who have autism spectrum disorders, various neurodegenerative diseases, things like that too. So there are applications, certain metabolic therapeutic applications for ketosis, but for simple metabolic management, health outcomes, fitness outcomes, I'll usually still keep my younger clients' fat intake higher than most diets would, but they're not on a full-on keto program. And then in addition to that, women in the HPA axis as well. In addition to that, women in the female athlete triad. So what I'm meaning by that is a lot of people in general, but it's most common in women. If you're undergoing a lot of stress at one time, like if you've been, let's say, overtraining, training a lot, if you're at a point in time where, for some women, it's just that time of the month too. If you've been fasting a lot, if you're, you know, psychologically, you know, emotionally, spiritually under a lot of stress too, that has a physiological effect on the body. Jumping right into an intermittent fasting and or keto program is probably not going to be the best idea in your case. So what I would recommend in that case is maybe dipping your toe in with like the fasting and doing that every once in a while, reducing training volume, and then slowly but surely bringing your fat levels up, and even still including a bit of carbohydrate refeeds occasionally too. Some of that is for, you know, personal preference, of course, and results, but a lot of that's also because giving your body a little bit of an insulin response actually can block cortisol levels. And for those of you who don't know, cortisol is the stress hormone. So there are certain applications where you're going to want to sort of deviate and go off track on purpose from keto. Yeah, and just for those of you who don't know, the HPA axis is the hypothalamic adrenal pituitary axis.
Yes. Awesome. And real quick before we go into this next section, I just want to see if there's any other questions out there. You know, if you've got any questions, we'll give you a minute right now just to put them into our webinar chat or up there on Facebook. You know, we're trying to cover everything here, but it's impossible to cover everything at a time without having some questions. And if you don't have any questions for us, we're going to have some questions for you. So, you know, what do you guys think about ketosis, and have you tried it before? Have there been any benefits to trying it, or have any of you had disastrous keto experiences? No, nobody's got any questions.
Tough crowd, dude.
Yeah.
No, hopefully that means we just explain things well enough. And, you know, we do not want you guys to feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose too. I know this is a lot of information. So definitely, you know, watch it, rewatch it. You probably can hack the setup a little bit so you can download the audio and listen to it if you're commuting or something like that, or even doing some cardio. But definitely get back to us if you have questions.
Absolutely. And you can ask us anything you want. We've actually got a free Facebook group up there. It's called the Warrior Soul Goji. I'll put a link up in the comments below this video when we're done here, where you guys can join it, and we can get you there. Actually, I'll put it in the chat here too.
And if any of my clients or communities watching too, just go ahead and join that group. I'm directing my clients there as well. I think this life's about collaboration at some level, and creating communities and like-minded tribes, and fostering new ideas. So definitely go ahead and join there.
Yeah, when you sign up for that, you get the free Facebook group, and we'll send you a bunch of stuff over about nutrition as well. So we get free workouts up there every day. But there's also some other opportunities here to learn a whole lot more. And we wanted to talk to you a little bit today about KetoCamp. And KetoCamp is something that Matt and I have developed. It's a fully integrated course that takes you from the process of keto adaptation, that beginning part where you're going through a bit of pain, you're dealing with things like that. We guide you through that. We take you through the entire process. We try to make that process as easy as possible. And then we take you all the way through to getting to a point where you can maintain ketosis and maintain it as a lifestyle. We include a lot of stuff here. It's got our full 130 plus page book. This is an ebook that Matt and I worked really, really hard on. We've got a 30 recipe cookbook, and this cookbook contains, I'm a big chef. I love cooking. It contains things like keto grilled cheese.
Cooking with Chris.
Yeah, cooking with Chris. We got some cheesecake, some maple bacon cheesecake in there, some pumpkin pie. How to make the perfect ribeye steak. How to make breakfast, all these types of things. We've got all these recipes in there. It's got a complete interactive course that's loaded with information. The course has a 12-week training program in there. We've got some big nutrition protocols in there. It takes you through the different supplementation plans you want to be on, understanding what micronutrients you want to be supplementing with, and understanding how this diet can impact your hormones and impact your hormonal health. We also have an entire module on setting your goals and creating a plan and managing this in your life in a way where it's going to be something sustainable, that you're not going to have to feel like you're on an actual diet where you're only doing this for a temporary period of time, but something that you're going to be able to integrate for the rest of your life. And we have another private Facebook mastermind where we'll be, it's the Keto Camp Mastermind, where we'll be specifically focused on ketosis and guiding our people who sign up for this course through the process so that they can get one-on-one mentorship from me and Matt. Like I said, it also has 12 weeks of workouts, complete training programs. It's got a complete instructional dietary program for both the adaptation and maintenance phases. So like I said, we're going to take you through both the adaptation phases, and we're going to, for those of you who want to branch out and maybe scale this a bit, we're going to have, instructions on how to use a cyclic ketogenic diet, how to use things like intermittent fast. Sorry, guys. How to use things like intermittent fasting.
How to biohack your sneeze.
Yeah, how to biohack your sneeze. Never sneeze again. No, I'm just kidding. But you'll be able to use things like intermittent fasting to leverage ketosis and leverage this diet so that you don't have to worry about stopping what you're doing during the day to eat 10 times a day or anything like that. Like I said, it's got the complete supplementation guide and the 30 recipe cookbook that includes desserts. You see the pumpkin pie right there. And like I said, methods for reintegrating carbs into your diet regularly through cyclic ketosis. And then we've got some bonus modules on there on brain hacks and sleep that are going to help you to get the most out of this for your mental performance. And that's membership in our private keto mastermind. And if you sign up today, you're also going to get a free consultation one-on-one from Matt or I, where we'll actually get on Skype with you. We'll help you lay out your macronutrients. and will help you to get on a path toward adapting. And that's a $500 value. And then altogether, the course has a value of over $800, but we're giving it to you today for $99 if you sign up. And it's going to be a limited time because Matt and I we're gonna be raising the prices on the course probably over the next week. But if you sign up today, you're going to get all of this: the book, the cookbook, the programs, the one-on-one consultation for $99. So if you guys have any questions about that, let us know now. If you have any questions about the material or anything like that, I think we got one from Troy. Troy, Matt, you said you wanted to address this question.
Yeah. So, without knowing your body fat level and goal, perhaps the consultation is something we do together. But what I would do to start with is to basically ask yourself what your goal is from there. And I'll give you a few extra bonus things besides just calorie intake, just to help you out. I would actually go on Google, and if you can't find this, please private message myself or Chris. I would use the Catch McCardle. That's KATCH space McCardle MCCARDLE calculator to find out your basal metabolic rate. And then what I would do from there is on one of the, I believe it's the first search result on Google, you can actually input your daily activity level. So in your case, you're in surgery, so you're going to be standing on your feet all day, maybe with some intermittent periods of sitting down. And you can plug in activity levels like that to calculate what your calorie threshold should be. What I would do, brother, is I would actually, to be honest with you, depending on what time of day you're working, intermittent fasting could actually work really well for you. By eating maybe just, let's say, 2 bigger meals a day, and then consolidating your food intake within, let's just say, like a roughly 8-hour window, and that can even be scaled too. What we can do essentially is maximize the amount of time that your body is not in a fed state, which will help everything from optimal health to burning fat, building muscle, helping your focus. And in addition to that too, Troy, what I would also say is if you're working nights, making sure that you're timing your sleep, where you're essentially blocking out, things like your windows when you are going to sleep. If you are going to be sleeping during the daytime, is going to help your cause too, with respect to your blood sugar levels as well. So yeah, just to give you a few takeaways, Catch McCardle calculator. I would use that to actually, let's just say you want to add muscle and burn fat. I would cycle your calories, and I would put yourself in a calorie deficit, slight calorie deficit on days that you're either doing cardio or relaxing. And I would actually give yourself a calorie surplus or at the very least break even on days that you're actually going to be doing strength work. And I would time that with your shift as well, and maybe be open to eating less meals, like 2 meals a day on shift, and then maybe as high as 3 on days where you are on shift, or to me where you're not on shift.
Awesome. Troy, let us know if that answered your question. Anybody else have any questions out there? We're looking on both Facebook and on the webinar chat right now. Also, I just posted a link to the Warrior Soul Keto Camp page for those of you who want to check out the course. And then as far as everything goes, if you got any questions on that, Troy says right now he's only eating 1 big meal, and that's dinner. So, I think that if you're only eating 1 meal, don't wrap your head around, oh my God, I'm only eating 1 meal a day. If you're doing the proper things to make sure that you're getting the proper micronutrients and make sure that you're getting the proper calories in, then 1 meal a day isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, and it could actually be a really good thing to give your digestive system a good rest. The other thing I would say is that there are ways of getting in calories throughout the day without raising your insulin levels too, including things like coconut oil and some of your drinks, getting coconut or MCT oil into your body through, maybe if you're grabbing a cup of coffee or anything like that, getting out there and grabbing that. And I think that'd be good too.
Troy, actually, one really good idea I had for you, and this is totally optional. You don't have to do this, but what I would actually do to fuel yourself during that time period, especially during the adaptation phase, is I would consider using, exogenous ketones. Chris and I are fans of Ketogenics. Full disclosure, we are friends with those guys. we do have a bit of a vested interest there. But, just to throw it out there, I have used Keto Sports. That's awesome too. So, if you hate us for some reason, don't let that stop you from enjoying the benefits of exogenous ketones. But something like that could definitely help you neurologically, focus-wise, fat burning-wise, energy-wise as well. And if you look in the private Facebook group, there's actually a podcast you can listen to on how to use certain supplements to actually, known as exogenous ketones, to biohack yourself further into ketosis. And it could definitely prop you up quite a bit for your shifts as well.
I'm actually going to post the link to the podcast in the chat here.
And to answer your last point, Troy, if you are eating and you're getting sort of sleepy, it's probably a blood sugar thing. So driving up your healthy fat levels could help a ton. And like Chris said, sneaking in some bulletproof coffee, that could help. This is just black coffee, but if you, because I'm fasting right now. So if you want, brother, I would actually say getting yourself keto-adapted and then sort of branching out from there could be a really good system for you. Hope that helps.
That and making sure that you're getting a good level of omega-3s in your diet. They really help brain function. I've done podcasts with a lot of different brain experts, from Dr. Mark Gordon to what's his name, Dr. Michael Lewis, the author of When Brains Collide. And having omega-3 fish oils in the diet can seriously help with your cognitive clarity and really reduce brain inflammation, especially those of you who might or may or may not have had traumatic brain injuries or concussions in the past. That's something you definitely want to be cognizant of. All right, guys. So again, one more time, I just want to put this up here. We've got our Warrior Soul Keto Camp.
Troy, while Chris is doing this too, feel free to add both of us on Facebook if you haven't already, myself included, because we post free content all the time that I think you can get a lot out of.
Absolutely. We got the Warrior Soul Keto Camp right here at warriorsoulketocamp.com. Just wanted to throw that up there. And those of you who are interested can check that out. And guys, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. And if you've got any questions for us, hit us up on the chat below the video on my personal page. You can private message me or Matt. You can hit us up via email. My email is info@warriorsoulapparel.com. Matt, can you throw yours out there?
Yeah, feel free to email me at info@evobiologics.com. That's EVOBIOLOGIX.com. info@evobiologics.com. In fact, evobiologics.com is my website, and you can always check out my blog post there. Chris and I share a lot of content too, so definitely be sure to check out his site as well. And between the two of us, we're definitely going to be pumping you guys full of free content. If you try the Keto Camp, really looking forward to working with you guys, doing the startup guide, and then also just the reality is that, this information is going to change over time as we come to have a better understanding of it. And I'm not afraid to say that. So the private mastermind group is so that we can continuously deliver you guys the best content and not be afraid to be the guys who are saying that the first guys to say the world is round when everybody's still saying that it's flat.
Yeah, somebody just asked for the link to Keto Camp.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. www.warriorsoulketocamp.com. That'll take you to the initial page, and then after that, we have a few different options up there. The special we're running today is to get everything for $99. The course,
right, and
book, everything.
And if you guys want the startup guides for completely free, and that includes the keto adaptation flashcards, free grocery list, free sample setup guides, free information. Probably you would find for other people charging for, we're giving away for free, and you can sign up for that if you want to see what we're about first at newsletter.warriorsoulketocamp.com. You'll enter your name and email. The list is not shared, and it's not endless either. It's just from us. It's just about nutritional ketosis.
Awesome, guys. Well, that's that, and I want you guys to enjoy your Sunday. enjoy family time. And for those of you who want to join Keto Camp, we'll be looking forward to seeing you. And look out for some more of our webinars. Matt and I are going to be doing quite a few in the future, probably one every week coming up. So.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to us on your Sunday.